My organisation is Hope4. It was established in the UK and later in Moldova. So Hope4 was established in February 2021. We're a British organisation, a British registered charity and NGO. We moved to Moldova in February 2021 to fight poverty and human trafficking. But on the 24th of February, everything changed for Hope4 as we started to turn our attention to the humanitarian response in the wake of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. So before the war, we were responding to the chronic poverty in Moldova. Moldova is Europe's poorest country. It competes for that title, ironically, with Ukraine. It has a major issue with orphans and also human trafficking. So we set about trying to address that complex issue. So we were feeding desperate families, providing food, resources, clothing. We were supporting orphanages, buying equipment, and also educating people on the issues of human trafficking. Now, I'm an entrepreneur, so my approach to these complex issues is one of sustainability. Human trafficking, for example, is a supply and demand industry. You have a need and you have someone that says that they can help with that need. And education alone can temporarily sever that relationship between those two entities. Whereas we want to focus on people who have a need to help them become more self-sufficient so they're no longer reliant on human traffickers. But this was what we were doing before the war. So on the morning of the 24th of February, my wife and I were having breakfast and our windows began to vibrate. And we later realized that was because a munitions dump had been targeted as part of the commencement of Russia's illegal invasion in Ukraine. We knew war had started, and what we didn't realize is how much our lives would change. My wife and I set off for Chisinau to what we understood was the first refugee center to be set up in an exhibition hall called Mode Expo. And we went down to really see what we could do, how we could support them in looking after refugees. It's actually the first time I'd ever met a refugee. And I remember we rounded the bend to Mode Expo, and there were masses of people, desperate people. Some of the most iconic moments in our life was on that first day when we were meeting people who were confused, scared, desperate. And so we started to work with the administration at Mode Expo to start buying equipment, because as I've explained, Moldova is Europe's poorest country. It wasn't ready, certainly in terms of infrastructure, for the scale of refugees passing over the border. I started to harness the incredible resource of LinkedIn, particularly with a LinkedIn influencer and trainer called Leah Turner, who made it her mission to raise money for Hope4, so my wife and I could respond to the scale of refugees passing across the border. In the first week, she managed to raise more than £90,000, which meant that we could start buying just basic equipment for the refugee centers, like washing machines and microwave ovens and kettles and even ironing boards and irons. Because they weren't ready. There'd been a lot of planning, and obviously the international community was expecting an invasion, but when it came to it, Moldova simply wasn't ready. And we made it our mission to plug the gaps in terms of Moldova's incredible response. And it is true to say the Moldovan people were fantastic. We talk a lot about Moldova's response, particularly ordinary people. We all remember Dunkirk, when the Allied forces were pinned against the beaches in France. People with boats on the south coast of England were asked to be part of the salvation of Allied troops in the war. And we all remember our history books how anyone with a boat traveled across the English Channel to rescue Allied troops. And Sir Winston Churchill regarded it as the greatest moment of salvation in British history. But the problem is, we saw the same response by Moldovan people who raced down to the various borders, flinging their doors open and inviting women and children into their cars, believing that they were part of the rescue operation. Now, it worked, it was fantastic, but the problem is so were human traffickers doing that. And it may be many, many years before we truly understand how many women and children were lost to human trafficking during that period of time. And that's part of the other thing that we do, working with an incredible international organization called Hope4's, who are one of the world's leading anti-trafficking charities. We attempt to educate people on the issues of human trafficking and how easy it is for them to become victims. And part of that is how to spot human traffickers. First and foremost, we are proud to stand with Ukraine. I have regular meetings with my new friend, Ambassador Marko Shevchenko of the Ukrainian Embassy in Chisinau, Moldova. And our meetings are around how we as an organization have responded to the war and to the influx of refugees. In fact, Marko and I don't refer to them as refugees. We refer to them as temporarily displaced Ukrainians, because we invest hope in the idea that Ukraine will win this war and people will get to go home. So in the meantime, my role and the role of my organization and my colleagues is to do everything we can to support temporarily displaced Ukrainians residing in Moldova. Now, you're probably aware there are around 100,000 refugees in Moldova. Many of them came with resources. Many of them came at the beginning with money. They had money in the bank, but obviously because of the war, people have lost their livelihoods, they've lost their jobs, and they don't have the income. So whilst people were able to come over and be self-sufficient, the longer this war continues, the less money people have, and therefore the levels of desperation are increasing in a country that doesn't have the resources to support them. So the Moldovan government turns to organizations like ours to plug the gap in their defenses, in their response, at a time also when NGOs are pulling out of Moldova, because no one expected this war to continue as long as it has. And this just demonstrates the incredible bravery and resilience of the Ukrainian armed forces. So we play a massive role with the support of our partners across LinkedIn, in particular, people like Leah Turner, but also Oakland International, who pay for this incredible warehouse that we can operate from, and also BidFood UK. We feed thousands of refugees every week with products that we are bringing in from the UK. In addition, there are organizations, one of which I'm not even allowed to talk about, from America, that they've sent £5 million worth of sports equipment, which we are systematically handing out to refugees who came with nothing, who as in the case of our own Elena, who has joined us as operations director, she explained to us earlier that she came with just the clothes that she was stood in, and her cases were carrying the belongings of her children and everything that they could scramble together. So it's for people like Elena, it's for the thousands of refugees that we've gotten to know, people that we care about, that we love, so we're feeding them and clothing them, but also providing education around trafficking. And in addition, we are also bringing humanitarian aid across the border into the regions of Mykolaiv and Kherson to feed villages that have been cut off by this war, who don't have reliable supply chains in terms of food. So we are here to make a massive difference. And in fact, if you were to have a conversation with Marko Shevchenko, he would tell you that there is no other organization in Moldova doing more for the Ukrainian people than Hope4, a comment that makes me very, very proud of what we're doing with the incredible support of the international community, in particular, the amazing people across LinkedIn. We are in Vinnytsia to talk about how we can further our support this side of the border. Now, I've mentioned already that we have made many trips into the Kherson region, for example, across enemy lines, providing food to the military as well as people who have been impacted by this war, particularly old people who haven't been able to escape. And we visited one village where most of the villagers have left, but there are old people and disabled people huddled together in a basement. And so we were able to visit them, assess their needs, and get resources to them as well. But we're here to explore how we can use the resources available to us across LinkedIn to provide greater support. For example, life continues here. Life continues across Ukraine. People have grown incredibly resilient. I've stayed in hotels when the air raid sirens have been going off, and no one leaves their room now because they've become so accustomed to sirens that it's a normal way of life, and it's a tragedy that that's the case. But because life goes on, we want to support that life, and one of the activities we want to support is sport. Children are enduring the most imaginable circumstances possible, and sport is a way of normalizing some of this, as much as it shouldn't be normal. It's a way of drawing their attention from the war and to focus on something that they are passionate about, and we want to support that. So we are, with our international partners, we want to come and inspire children. I'm an ex-gymnast, I'm a qualified gymnastics coach, so I understand the value of sport personally, and so I understand how children feel when they're encouraged to participate in sport, and that shouldn't end simply because of this illegal war and this illegal invasion by Russia. So we're here, and this is amongst other things. I'm an entrepreneur, so I want to support civil society to be self-sufficient, as well as inspiring young people just to press on. I've mentioned Oakland International. Now, there are two reasons they are supporting us. One is to give us an incredible brand new 1,100 square meter warehouse in which to bring humanitarian aid in from the UK. The other is really exciting. We know that food producers, for example, have been adversely affected by this war, cutting off great swathes of their customers. And so we want to be responsible for economic recovery, particularly across the southeast region. Oakland International are initiating a countrywide strategy. We are simply a small part of that. And that is to provide food producers, and in our case, across the southeastern region of Ukraine, access to the highly lucrative retail market in the UK. So already Dean Atwell, who is the CEO and founder of Oakland International, he has got a team that are working already with the UK retailers to create Ukraine shelves within their stores. So those displaced living in the UK can go to a retail store and buy the food that they could buy at home. Now, this serves two purposes, one of which is obviously to provide subsidized routes to Ukrainian food producers through our warehouse to the UK retail market. But also imagine being a Ukrainian living in the UK, being able to go to a retail store and having a taste of home. This will have a massive impact on the mental well-being of Ukrainians living in the UK, and it's a strategy that we are hoping other countries will adopt to further support both refugees living in their countries, but also to be a part of the recovery and the part of the solution for producers across the whole of Ukraine. First and foremost, I agree. How do I see the future of Ukraine after the victory? I just want to go on record as saying that I think Ukraine's response to this invasion has been extraordinary. Ukraine isn't just fighting for Ukraine, it's fighting for all of us. And I, for one, spend most of my life reminding the West at a time when it's convenient for them to forget that this war is continuing. I'm not politically driven. I'm a man of love. And my response is purely to support the true victims of this war, victims that are fleeing for their lives, people who have paid the ultimate price, civilians, military, that shouldn't even be in this situation. They will win. Ukraine will know victory. And then Hope4 wants to be a part of helping Ukraine build both structurally and economically. And we will do everything within our power using the incredible resources available to us across, in particular, LinkedIn, which has 900 million users, around 100 million businesses, to be a part of that solution. And the great thing about my organization is charity has become a dirty word, because a lot of charities will use more than 80% of the money that they raise on themselves. And we have completely turned that model around. We exist to serve the people of Ukraine, of Moldova, people impacted by poverty, human trafficking, war, natural disaster. We're supplying aid to Turkey, for example. And I don't even pay myself a salary, because it's far more important to me to take the aid that we're receiving and deploy it instantly, in real time, in real life. We have developed a reputation for complete transparency, showing donors that there is a trustworthy route for their philanthropy and their giving. And so we want to be a major part of Ukraine's recovery.